G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of The Wholesome Heathen. I'm Johnny Hellwinter, The Wholesome Heathen, and today we're going to be doing another cooking lesson. So we are going to be doing a ravioli pasta bake, which is effectively like lasagna in that it's sort of like a layered pasta and meat tomato dish, but we're going to be doing ours as vegan as we possibly can. That is to say, vegan-ish. If you remember the first episode with the risotto, we try and do everything as close to vegan as possible, but we recognise sometimes there are limitations, especially now during these difficult times with lockdown and with certain restrictions and limitations. Sometimes we can't actually travel outside of our zone to shop at places that we know for a fact have vegan ingredients. So we do the best we can with what we got, and that's all anyone can do. So with that in mind, let's get stuck into it. So the ingredients for this are actually really basic. All we need is obviously some ravioli. We've got this vegan ravioli that's a spinach and veggie ricotta. We have some vegan beef-free mince. Obviously, as always, a bowl full of mushrooms. We have these just sort of to pull aside the curtain a little bit and let you peek behind. Even when we're not filming and even if we're not cooking something with mushrooms, we just have bowls of mushrooms just lying around. That's the kind of hobbits we are. We just need a can of tomatoes, some jar garlic, and this is a bottle or a jar rather of bolognese sauce that we prepared the other day. If you were following on the Instagram, we actually followed the recipe for That's What I Reckon's bolognese sauce, and we made enough of it that we could jar it ourselves. So this is a jar of Nat's bolognese sauce. Also, you'll need 1 onion and some cloves of garlic. We've opted to do both, chopped fresh garlic and jar garlic, because we're like the mushrooms, we're just mad on it. So, yeah, as always, it's up to you what you put in and what you leave out, and it's up to you whether or not you use just jar garlic or if you combine the two or just use freshly chopped garlic. As always, it's up to you. I feel like at this point, I don't have to show you how to chop garlic or onion. So we're just going to do a real fast forward on that one and get over to cooking. See you there. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get some ravioli on the boil. I appreciate with the camera angles and everything, we can't necessarily see the ravioli boiling, but trust me, it's doing it. And if you can't boil ravioli, you're in deep trouble. Alright, so obviously the next step is going to be to cook off, everything that we need to make our sort of sauce and meat element. So we're going to be chucking in the onion and garlic, the mince, the tomato and the bolognese sauce, and the mushrooms, obviously, all in that pan, and just giving it all a good cook. I mean, it's all going to be going into the big pasta dish later on, and cook again in the oven. But for the time being, we're just going to give everything a bit of a fry off. Oh, God, I love the smell of onion and garlic. Righto. That ravioli has successfully boiled. So we're just going to chuck that in a drainer, set it aside for now. I will say that in comparison to traditional beef or pork mince, vegan mince, it can be a little bit difficult to tell when it's actually cooked if you're frying it off in this sort of fashion. Obviously, you know, with actual meat-based mince, you know, you can sort of get that browning off effect, whereas the vegan mince doesn't really brown off in the same sort of fashion. I've got to imagine it has something to do with the proteins in it. But at the same time, it's not meat, so it's not as necessary to ensure that it's as thoroughly cooked, especially considering, as I've said before, it is going to be cooked again in the oven. So, you know, no doubt in your mind it is actually going to be cooked the whole way through. It's just with vegan mince, it's a little bit more difficult to tell, and it's a bit more up to your discretion as to how cooked you want it to be. If you're cooking it vegan. Now that your mince has had a little bit of time to party with the onion, it's time to introduce some new guests to the mix. Chuck in your tomato. Mushies. The bolognese sauce. And if you're a true hedonist like us, another couple of spoons of garlic. Get into you. Kind of goes without saying, but give it a bloody good stir. Time for a bit of a secret weapon. Even though there are a bunch of herbs and spices already in the bolognese sauce that we made, just for a little bit of extra kick, just an Italian herb blend. I know it's really basic, but it's got all the things in there that you like, and it just gives it just a little bit more flavour. It just sort of brings everything out. Just put a bit of a sprinkle of that on there. Turn the heat down. Doesn't need to boil. Just let that simmer for a little while, let the flavours really soak in. Beautiful. Alright, so we're going to take our pretty traditional and I have to say pretty cute looking lasagna dish that we got at the op shop. We're going to take roughly just over a third of what we've got here in the pan, and we're going to distribute it evenly across the bottom. Sort of, it's exactly like we're making a lasagna. We can't be too pedantic. But that being said, once you've got it spread relatively evenly, it's time to start putting on your ravioli layers. So you're using roughly half of the ravioli that you've got, and then after that we do a layer of vegan cheese. As with everything we do here, it's to taste. Obviously, depending on what size lasagna dish you have will sort of determine how your layers work out for you. We've got it kind of figured out to exactly our dimensions because we make this every week, so we sort of have a system in place. If you wanted to make it denser, you could just use more mince or more tomato. You could just make more of the sauce base, or again, you could make more ravioli. This is what works for us. We very rarely work in exact measurements, so we're just sort of showing you the method in the madness, but how you choose to experiment with your own madness is entirely up to you. Alright, here's where things become quite vegan-ish. Because my darling wife is vegan, we cook as much of the meal as possible vegan as we can. Which means that for the final layer, we do a strip with the remaining vegan cheese. These bags don't go particularly far. We do a strip of the vegan cheese, and then I use, for my half, I use a strip of this Italian-inspired cheese, which is just a blend. And this is where we get veganish from. Jess is laughing right now because of the absurd amount of cheese that I put on my half of the lasagna. But here's the thing. I'm a maniac and I can't be stopped. It was like magic. So basically now that the oven has preheated to 230 degrees, you just want to cover this bad boy with alfoil. I'll turn the audio off when I'm editing this because that was not ASMR. Then we take this covered dish and we chuck it in that hot oven. And that's his home for the next 20 minutes. So I guess we'll see you at, I don't know, 10 past 7. Yeah, no, we don't believe in matching oven mitts. It's been about 20 minutes, so we're going to have a look at this bad boy. Oh yeah. So as you can see, all of the dairy cheese has melted. The vegan cheese has not. That's to be expected. It very rarely melts, if at all, then, if it melts, it doesn't melt to the same degree. So that's fine. And now we move on to the last stage of this operation, which is we bang it back in the oven for another 10 minutes, maybe 15. But 10 minutes normally does it, and that's basically just to get that last sort of crispy melt going on with the cheeses. As a bonus round, we're going to chuck some garlic bread in there too. I've swapped hands just to trick you. Okay. There it is. The finished product. Don't forget to turn off your oven. That's a mistake you only make once, and then you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, geez, the kitchen feels hot. Actually, you know what? Best thing to do, just like a lasagna, is let that sit for a minute. But what I will do is get the garlic bread out of the oven before it burns. Oh, motherfucking G bread. Time to serve up. Alright. Beautiful. So just, serve it up with a bit of garlic bread and a bit of red wine and you're all good to go. So, this week's shout out is a little bit strange and a little bit tangential, but that's okay because not everything needs to be perfect, which is the opposite of the mindset of the character portrayed by the man I'm shouting out. What I'm trying to get at is this week's shout out is Anthony Hopkins, Sir Anthony Hopkins, beloved stage and screen actor. We've recently, and I know we're super late to the party, been watching the series Hannibal on Netflix. And I know that obviously Mads Mikkelsen does an excellent, like peerless performance of Hannibal Lecter in the series. But I feel like it's pertinent to this whole thing that as a young man, when I was in year 12, so sort of 17, 18, I was obsessed with the Hannibal Lecter films. I watched Red Dragon in particular religiously. I realized that a lot of people think that Silence of the Lambs is the only one that counts, and that Hannibal was an unnecessary sequel, and that Red Dragon was an even more unnecessary prequel. But Red Dragon was the one that resonated with me, particularly because I already really enjoyed Ralph Fiennes and Ed Norton as actors, and Harvey Keitel obviously killed it. But Anthony Hopkins being given full range to do Hannibal Lecter, considering he was given so little screen time in Silence of the Lambs, in Hannibal and Red Dragon, being given so much opportunity to play with the character. Just rewatching the series, like watching the series now, has just really made me reflect and think about all the things that I really loved about it. And I think, like for most people, I would have to say, the thing that they took away most from Silence of the Lambs and the other Hannibal films was Hannibal. And Anthony Hopkins, it can't be understated how powerful he made that performance. And I think about him now, not just in terms of Hannibal, not just in terms of, cooking and having a nice glass of Chianti, but also because, not that it's Chianti, of course, it's Shiraz, we only drink Shiraz. But I love that in this difficult time that we find ourselves in this struggle that 2020 has become, this, political, not just political, but like almost philosophical and ethical struggle that we find ourselves in constantly. With everything that's going on, from the pandemic to the police violence to, basically the foundations of democracy crumbling under the feet of Americans. Anthony Hopkins has been, for lack of a better term, like a small spot of light on what can otherwise be like quite a dark canvas. And I appreciate that, because he not only sort of brought to us and brought to life one of the most infamous and memorable villains of film history, but in his old age has managed to become such a source of wholesome content. I cannot recommend highly enough checking out the videos that he puts out of him with his paintings, with him with his song and dance. He basically just doesn't give a damn anymore, and it's wonderful to see, because there are a lot of celebrities that put so much effort into maintaining a certain image and maintaining a certain air of mystique, and he just doesn't seem to care anymore. And it's lovely to know that behind what could have been such a veneer of, this professional actor who brings such a level of, villainy to a role, and such weight and gravitas to a role, to know that he's actually just some super light-hearted, like, fun-loving old man. And I think that's wonderful, and I cannot thank him enough for all the years of joy that he's given us, whether it be through his films or through his recent videos that he's put out on Facebook and YouTube. So thank you, Sir Anthony Hopkins. Cheers to you, and I hope that 2020 finds you as well as, it can find anyone.